Ethan tightened the straps of his backpack as he stepped onto the narrow mountain trail. The wind whispered through the tall pines, carrying a sharp, clean scent of snow and earth. He had spent weeks away exploring distant forests and mapping trails for his personal journals. But now the thought of returning to his small, isolated cabin filled him with a quiet relief. The mountains had always been his refuge, a place where he could think, breathe, and be completely alone. As he neared the cabin, a sense of something unusual prickled at the back of his mind. The door was slightly ajar. Not broken, not forced, just slightly open as if someone had stepped inside and forgotten to close it. Ethan froze. He always locked the cabin, even during brief trips. And there was no one else for miles. Slowly, he stepped forward, his boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. "Hello?" he called, though he already knew no human would answer. The echo of his voice seemed almost too loud in the quiet of the mountain. Inside, everything appeared normal at first glance. The firewood was stacked neatly, the table wiped clean, and his journals were where he had left them. Yet a strange, shimmering light flickered faintly across the walls, like sunlight dancing through crystal, though the sun had long set. Ethan squinted. Something about the light wasn't right. It didn't match any lamp or candle he owned. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. Behind a tall spruce tree near the cabin's edge, he saw a figure tall, slender, and unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin glimmered softly, faintly reflecting the moonlight, and her eyes, large and luminous, stared at him from the shadows. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The figure didn't move. But when she realized he had noticed her, she vanished behind the tree almost instantly, as if she were part of the shadows themselves. Ethan froze, unsure what to do. He had never encountered another human here, let alone this. He lowered his backpack slowly, trying not to make a sound. "It's okay," he whispered to himself, though he wasn't sure if he was convincing himself or her. "I won't hurt you." For a long moment, the forest was still, except for the faint whistle of wind through the pines. Ethan scanned the area carefully. The footprints around the cabin were unlike any animal tracks he had ever seen. Delicate, long, and glowing faintly. Whoever or whatever was here wasn't human. And somehow, they weren't trying to harm him either. Ethan stepped closer to the spruce tree, his curiosity overpowering his caution. "You don't have to hide," he said softly. I'm just Ethan, you can trust me." The figure didn't respond, but he saw a flicker of movement, her hand reaching out slightly, hesitating, then withdrawing. Ethan sensed fear, not aggression. Whoever she was, she wanted to be left alone. But something about him had caught her attention. He decided to step back and leave the cabin for the night. "I'll make a fire," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Maybe it will help you feel safe." The fire crackled to life quickly, the warmth filling the small clearing in front of the cabin. He gathered some fallen branches, stacking them carefully so the flames wouldn't spread. The orange light danced on the trees and rocks, and for a few moments, everything felt normal, again peaceful, but he knew the peace was fragile. As the fire burned, Ethan watched the shadows among the trees. The figure remained hidden, watching him silently. He couldn't see her face clearly, but her movements were graceful, precise, and intelligent. He realized that she wasn't just an animal or a spirit, she was something else, something extraordinary. The hours passed. The night grew colder, the wind biting at his jacket. But Ethan stayed by the fire, unwilling to sleep while she remained nearby. At times, he thought he saw her step closer, then disappear before he could get a proper look. The forest around him seemed alive in a new way, charged with a quiet energy he'd never noticed before. Ethan remembered all the stories of mysterious creatures in the mountains, tales told by hikers and old forest guides. He had always dismissed them as exaggeration until now. But this was real, and he couldn't explain it. By midnight, exhaustion tugged at his eyelids. He settled on a log near the fire, keeping one eye on the shadows. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we'll figure this out. Don't be afraid." He drifted into a light sleep, still aware of the presence watching him. In the dark, a faint shimmer moved closer, cautiously. The alien woman had never seen a human like Ethan before. Someone who did not attack, did not scream, did not demand. Someone who simply existed and waited patiently. She observed him quietly, her mind calculating, analyzing, but also curious. Humans were strange creatures, fragile, yet resourceful. Their emotions were unpredictable, yet their actions often spoke louder than their words. She had encountered many species across the stars, but humans were different. There was something about him that made her wonder if he could be trusted. The firelight reflected in her luminous eyes, and she studied him closely. His steady breathing, the careful way he arranged logs for the fire, the way he watched the forest, he was cautious, but not fearful. Unlike other humans she had observed, he seemed capable, worthy. Ethan stirred in his sleep, mumbling something incomprehensible. She recoiled slightly, not understanding the sounds, but noting the calmness in his voice. She wanted to reach out, to communicate, but years of instinct and caution held her back. One wrong move could scare him, and she needed to learn first to understand his world. Hours passed. The sky began to lighten, and the first hints of dawn touched the mountaintop. Ethan awoke, rubbing his eyes and stretching. The fire was almost out, leaving only glowing embers. He glanced at the spruce tree and froze. The figure was gone. Not behind the tree, not near the cabin, nowhere in sight. Ethan's heart raced. Had she run away? Or was she still nearby, just watching him? He scanned the forest carefully, every movement, every shadow. He knew she had the advantage. She could move silently, blend with the surroundings, but he felt no fear, only curiosity. He sighed and walked toward the cabin to prepare breakfast, thinking over what had happened. Whoever she was, she had chosen his cabin for a reason. Perhaps she needed help. Perhaps she was simply lost. Either way, Ethan resolved to be patient. As he cooked over a small camp stove, he noticed something on the ground, tiny glowing footprints leading into the forest. They weren't large, and they didn't follow any straight path. They seemed to appear and disappear almost magically. He knelt and touched one, feeling a faint warmth. "They're real," he whispered. "You're real." For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. This was more than survival, more than solitude. This was discovery. Something extraordinary had entered his life. He knew it would change everything. The alien woman watched from a distance, hidden among the pines. She didn't fully trust him yet, but she sensed something important. Humans were unpredictable. Yes, but this human, Ethan, was different. She would observe him more, learn his habits, and maybe, just maybe, begin to trust him. As the sun rose over the mountain peaks, casting golden light across the valley, both human and alien began their silent vigil. Neither spoke, but both understood. The other was now a part of this remote, fragile world. In the story of their first encounter, the night she hid and he watched would be the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. For Ethan, the mountains had always been a refuge, but now they had become a place of wonder, mystery, and a promise of something extraordinary just beyond the Furlick. And the alien woman, though she hid, though she feared, felt a tiny spark of hope for the first time in a long while. The mountain was quiet once more, but the air itself seemed alive with the possibility of a new beginning. The morning sunlight spilled over the mountain peaks, painting the forest in shades of gold and green. Ethan moved quietly around his cabin, chopping firewood and preparing breakfast. He kept glancing toward the trees, half expecting to see the mysterious figure he had encountered the night before. But there was nothing, only the wind rustling the leaves and the soft sound of birds calling to one another. He sighed and shook his head. "Maybe she's gone," he muttered. But deep down, he knew she hadn't vanished entirely. The footprints in the forest suggested otherwise. She was still nearby, watching, learning, and waiting. After breakfast, Ethan set out to explore a little beyond his cabin, following the faint glowing tracks he had seen. The forest was thick, the air crisp and clean. He moved slowly, leaving no sudden sounds, careful not to scare her away if she was indeed still near. Hours passed. and he found the tracks leading to a small clearing where the sunlight fell in warm beams. The air shimmered slightly, as if charged with energy. There, at the edge of the clearing, finally caught a glimpse of her again. She froze when she saw him, her luminous eyes wide with fear. But unlike the first night, she did not vanish immediately. She stayed just out of reach, hidden behind a cluster of ferns. Watching him carefully, Ethan held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. I want to understand. I don't want to scare you." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him. She had seen countless creatures across her travels, but humans were unlike any other species. Fragile, unpredictable, yet intelligent and capable. This human Ethan was cautious, yet calm. There was something in him that made her pause. Slowly, he stepped a little closer, crouching to appear smaller, less threatening. Then he placed a small gift on the ground, a piece of bread, wrapped in a clean cloth. He stepped back, watching. The alien hesitated, then reached out with a delicate glowing hand. Her fingers hovered just above the gift, trembling slightly before she withdrew and vanished into the forest. Ethan's heart sank for a moment, but he understood. Trust could not be forced. It had to grow slowly. It's like a seed taking root in the soil. For the next few days, Ethan kept this routine. He left small gifts near the clearing: food, water, clean blankets, even simple tools like a knife and matches. He kept his distance, respecting her need for safety, and slowly she began to respond. At first it was small things. The bread would be moved slightly, or his gifts arranged neatly instead of scattered. Sometimes he would find a small stone or twig placed on top of his, offerings a subtle acknowledgement that she had been there. Ethan began to leave simple drawings on paper, sketches of the cabin, the forest, and himself. At first, he left them near the gifts, hoping she might understand. Then, one day he found a drawing placed in return, a tiny figure, luminous and elegant, standing behind a tree, watching him. His heart leaped. She was trying to communicate. Excitement replaced the fear he had felt. "You're learning," he whispered, smiling. "We can understand each other even if we don't speak the same language." The alien woman watched from a distance, her mind racing. Humans were strange indeed. They were fragile, but they also possessed patience and creativity. She had never encountered a species that approached her with such care and understanding. Slowly, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity, and maybe even trust. One afternoon, Ethan decided to take a risk. He sat near the clearing, motionless, and simply watched the forest. Hours passed. The sun shifted across the sky, casting long shadows. And then, almost imperceptibly, she appeared fully in view this time. She didn't hide behind trees, though she stayed a few meters away. Ethan's heart pounded, but he remained calm. He slowly reached into his backpack and took out a small notebook and pencil. On the blank page, he drew a simple picture: a human hand extended toward an alien figure, symbolizing friendship. Then he set the notebook on the ground and stepped back. For a long moment, she studied it, her luminous eyes reflecting the sunlight. Then slowly, she moved closer, crouched down, and traced her own hand in the dirt, mirroring the drawing. Ethan's eyes widened. This was the first real communication, the first bridge between two very different beings. The next few days were filled with quiet observation and shared routines. Ethan would chop wood, fetch water, or tend to the small garden he had started near the cabin. She would watch, sometimes moving closer, sometimes retreating. Slowly, they developed a rhythm and spoken, yet understood. Sometimes she would mimic his actions, learning from him. She discovered how to use simple tools, how to start a fire, and how to move silently through the forest. Ethan was amazed at her intelligence and adaptability. He realized that humans were not the only clever beings in the universe, but he also felt proud of his own skills. Knowing that his patience and understanding had earned her attention, one evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Ethan noticed her sitting a few meters away, gazing at the fire he had built. The air was calm, the forest quiet. He decided to take another risk. He picked up a small stick and drew a circle in the dirt between them. Inside the circle, he placed a few pieces of bread and water. Then he stepped back. She watched him carefully, her eyes glowing faintly. Slowly, she stepped into the circle, examining the offerings, and finally accepted them. Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of hope. This small act of trust was more powerful than any words. He realized that human kindness, patience, and empathy could reach even the most distant and cautious beings. Over the following weeks, their silent communication deepened. They used drawings, gestures, and careful observation to share thoughts. Ethan showed her how to gather food, how to build simple shelters, and how to navigate the forest safely. In return, she revealed glimpses of her own abilities, how she could manipulate light, create small illusions, and sense subtle changes in the environment. Ethan was amazed, but he never felt threatened. He realized that her powers were not meant for harm, they were tools, just as his own skills were tools for survival. The more he learned about her, the more he admired her intelligence and grace. One day, while exploring a nearby stream, Ethan found a small, glowing stone. He picked it up and held it out, offering it to her. She hesitated, then touched it gently, her fingers brushing his for the first time. A faint warmth spread through him. It's a silent acknowledgement of their growing bond. That night, as the stars appeared over the mountains, Ethan and the alien woman sat near the fire. He watched her as she observed the flames, her eyes reflecting the dancing light. She did not speak, but he felt a connection stronger than words. For the first time, Ethan understood something important. Trust and understanding were the foundation of all relationships, even between species. He realized that human curiosity, patience, and empathy could create bonds that transcended fear and difference. The alien woman, for her part, began to feel something new as well. Humans were fragile, yes, and unpredictable, but they were also capable of great kindness and courage. Ethan had not threatened her, had not forced her, had not tried to control her. Instead, he had shown patience, understanding, and respect. She had never met a human like him before, and slowly, she began to feel something she hadn't felt in years: hope. As the night deepened, Ethan leaned back on a log, gazing at the stars. The alien woman remained nearby, hidden slightly by the shadows, but closer than ever before. He knew their journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, dangers in the forest, and questions about where she had come from. But for the first time, he felt certain of one thing: they could face whatever came together. The mountains were quiet, filled only with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Yet, in that quiet, a new story was beginning. A story of trust, understanding, and the first steps toward friendship between human and alien. And as the fire burned low, Ethan smiled, knowing that the bond they were forming was something extraordinary, proof that human patience, empathy, and courage could bridge even the greatest divides in the universe. The mountain air was crisp and still, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Ethan woke before dawn, the soft light of early morning brushing the peaks around the cabin. For weeks, he had lived in harmony with Lyra, the alien woman who had once hid in the shadows. Together, they had learned from one another, survived threats, and built a bond stronger than words could describe. Today, however, felt different. A sense of tension lingered in the air, subtle but unmistakable. Ethan's instincts, honed from years of living in the wild, told him that something was coming, something beyond ordinary danger. He rose quietly, careful not to wake Lyra, who slept nearby. Her glowing form curled like a small lantern in the dark. He checked the perimeter of the cabin, scanning the forest beyond. At first, everything seemed peaceful. But then, a faint shimmer in the trees caught his eye, an energy signature unlike anything he had seen before. Yet distinct from the human operatives they had evaded weeks ago. Ethan crouched low, drawing patterns in the dirt to explain to Lyra. When she awoke, she immediately understood. Her glowing eyes reflected the seriousness of the moment, and she moved closer to him. Together, they prepared, silent but coordinated. ready for whatever challenge approached. Hours later, a sudden vibration rippled through the forest. Trees shook gently, leaves fell, and the air seemed charged. Ethan and Lyra hid behind a large boulder near the cabin. From the tree line, they could see movement, fast, deliberate, and alien. A group of unknown creatures, tall and armored in dark exoskeletons, moved toward the cabin. They were unlike humans, unlike anything Ethan had encountered. Ethan's heart raced, but he remained calm. He placed a hand on Lyra's arm. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We can handle this together." "Ow." Lyra's eyes flickered with determination. She had learned much from him: courage, patience, and strategy. Now it was time to act. The creatures advanced, scanning for energy. Ethan knew they were drawn to Lyra's presence, sensing her unique abilities. If they found her, they would not understand her intelligence or her peaceful nature. They might attack or capture her. He took a deep breath and motioned for Lyra to follow him into the dense forest. Using her powers, she manipulated light to create illusions, making it appear as if the forest were empty. Ethan led the way, moving silently, anticipating the creature's path. The creatures were cautious but persistent. They emitted low hums and scanned with strange devices that pulsed in faint waves. Ethan and Lyra had to stay ahead, using both human intuition and alien skill. Lyra created small distractions, shimmering lights that drew the creatures away from the path, while Ethan set traps with fallen branches and rocks to confuse them further. Hours passed in tense silence. The creatures were clever, but so were Ethan and Lyra. They moved with patience, observation, and trust. Every step they took brought them closer to the hidden valley beyond the cabin, the safe place Ethan had discovered weeks ago. Finally, they reached the valley, a sheltered area surrounded by high rocks and dense trees. Ethan drew circles in the dirt, marking positions in safe spots. Lyra studied the layout, committing it to memory, her glowing eyes reflecting strategy and focus. The creatures followed, closing in on their position. Ethan whispered to Lyra, pointing toward a narrow passage in the rocks. "We lure them there," he said. "Then we block their path." Lyra nodded, stepping forward carefully. Using her powers, she created multiple shimmering duplicates of herself, moving them across the clearing. The creatures paused, confused by the illusions. Ethan seized the moment. He rolled large rocks into the narrow passage, creating a temporary barrier that blocked their advance. The creatures emitted frustrated hums. Scanning for the real Lyra, Ethan and Lyra stayed perfectly still, barely breathing as the light from the illusions danced across the forest floor. Slowly, the creatures began to retreat, unable to navigate the blocked passage and confused by the subtle tricks Lyra had created. When they were gone, Ethan and Lyra finally allowed themselves to relax. Ethan exhaled deeply, smiling at her. "We did it," he said softly. "Together." Lyra approached him, her glow dimming slightly in relief. She reached out, touching his arm lightly, a gesture of trust, attitude, and acknowledgement. Ethan returned the gesture, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with the cold mountain air. For the rest of the day, they worked together to repair the cabin and ensure the valley remained hidden and safe. Ethan admired how quickly Lyra had adapted her powers to practical use, protecting them, creating illusions and aiding in strategy without ever harming anything. As night fell, the mountains were calm once more. Ethan and Lyra sat near the fire, sharing a quiet meal. The stars above were bright and endless, reminding them of the vastness of the universe and the uniqueness of their connection. Ethan spoke softly, breaking the silence. "You know, I never thought I'd meet anyone like you. Not from this world, or any other." Lyra tilted her head, a subtle glow in her eyes that Ethan had come to recognize as her way of smiling. She stepped closer, mirroring his posture, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. Their bond was deeper than language. It was trust, friendship, and understanding built through patience, empathy, and shared experience. Over the next few days, they explored the valley more freely. Lyra showed Ethan her ability to manipulate energy, not just for illusions, but to enhance the forest around them, helping plants grow slightly faster. Sensing subtle shifts in water currents, and even cleaning the small stream they used for drinking, Ethan was amazed. He realized that humans, with curiosity and courage, could learn from alien knowledge, and together, they could accomplish things neither could alone. One afternoon, Ethan set up a small telescope near the edge of the valley. "I want to show you something," he said. Lyra approached, tilting her head in curiosity. Together, they looked at the stars, and Ethan began pointing out constellations, planets, and distant galaxies. Lyra's eyes widened, reflecting the stars above. "You can see so much," Ethan whispered, "and yet there's so much more to discover. Maybe one day we can explore together, human courage and curiosity, combined with your abilities." She leaned closer, her glowing form illuminating the notebook Ethan had brought along. He sketched a small spacecraft with stars surrounding it, representing the possibility of future adventures. Lyra traced the lines with her fingers, smiling subtly. The silent understanding between them was profound. They shared dreams of exploration. Learning and discovery beyond the mountains they called home. Days turned into weeks, and the mountains became a sanctuary for both human and alien. Lyra no longer hid, trusting Ethan fully. Ethan, in turn, had learned the extraordinary patience and ingenuity of a species far beyond his own. They were equals, allies, and friends. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ethan and Lyra sat near the fire. He watched her, marveling at how much she had grown comfortable in the human world, and how much he had grown to appreciate her unique perspective. "You know," he said quietly, "the mountains have always been my refuge. But now they're more than that. They're proof that trust, patience, and courage can create something extraordinary." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the firelight. She stepped closer, and for the first time she spoke a single word in human language. "Home," Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond words. "Yes," he said softly. "Home." In that moment, they both understood the truth. Humanity's courage, empathy, and curiosity had bridged the gap between worlds. Together, human and alien had not only survived, they had created a bond, learned from one another, and built a place where they could belong. The mountains were quiet, the stars twinkling overhead. Ethan and Lyra sat side by side, the fire crackling gently, knowing that the challenges they had faced were only the beginning. But they were ready for the future, for discovery, and for whatever adventures lay beyond the mountains. And as the night deepened, Ethan realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just in survival or technology, but in the ability to connect, to trust, and to grow alongside others, even those from distant worlds. Lyra, for her part, had discovered the same truth. She had learned that patience, understanding, and courage could create bonds stronger than fear, deeper than distance, and brighter than the stars above. Together, they watched the fire, the mountains, and the sky, knowing that this new beginning was just the start of something extraordinary. And in the quiet mountains, under the endless stars, a human and an alien shared a simple, undeniable truth. The universe was vast, full of wonders, and even in the darkest forests, trust and friendship could light the way. The planet of Aurelia 7 shone like a jewel in the distance, its forests glimmering with shades of green and gold that humans had never seen before. The human colony, established just a year ago, sprawled across a wide clearing surrounded by towering trees and strange flowering plants. The sky, tinted with soft purples and oranges, gave the place an almost magical appearance. Yet beneath its beauty, the planet held secrets that were older than humanity itself. Captain Elias Kane stood at the edge of the clearing, surveying the alien landscape. He was a man built for exploration, curious, brave, and always ready to take calculated risks. Beside him, the rest of the human team unpacked equipment, their chatter mixing with the calls of unknown creatures echoing through the forest. "I still say we're overreacting," said Dr. Henry Sloan. the team's geologist, hefting a scanner. "It's just a forest. There's nothing alive here that can hurt us." Elias gave a small smile, but said nothing. Experience had taught him to listen more than to argue, especially in unfamiliar territory. That's when she arrived, Leora. A Avari scientist stepped lightly into the clearing. Her skin shimmered like silver in the soft light, and her eyes, wide and intelligent, held the kind of calm urgency that only someone who had seen danger before could possess. The humans froze for a moment, unsure if she was hostile. The Viari were rarely seen by human eyes, and their technology, though subtle, had always been far more advanced. "Humans," Leora said, her voice melodic but firm. "I must speak to your leader." Elias stepped forward. "I am Captain Kane. You are?" "I am Leora," she replied, bowing slightly. "I am here to warn you." "Warn us? About what?" asked Henry, suspicion flickering in his voice. Leora's gaze moved over the forest. "Something beneath this planet awakens soon. It is ancient, intelligent, and unpredictable. You must prepare." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Beneath the planet, yes. It communicates in ways you do not yet understand. It respects intelligence but acts through those it chooses. One of your team is already affected."
Nice.
Henry snorted. "Affected? This isn't some fairy tale, Captain." Ilias's eyes met Leora's, and something unspoken passed between them. He sensed urgency behind her words, an energy that humans rarely encountered. "Show me," he said simply. Leora's expression softened, almost relieved. "Come with me," she gestured, toward a shallow ravine at the edge of the forest where the ground seemed to pulse faintly with energy. The humans hesitated. Curiosity and perhaps the human sense of adventure pushed them forward as they approached. Elias felt a subtle vibration through the soles of his boots. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat buried within the soil itself. Leora knelt, placing her hands gently on the ground. A glow spread across her fingertips, illuminating intricate patterns etched into the dirt. "This is how it communicates," she explained. "It sends pulses through the ground, and only certain minds can interpret them. Your mind is open to it." Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "Open to it." "Yes," she said. "You do not yet know it, but it has begun speaking through you." The words made Elias pause. He felt fine, completely normal, but a strange sense of calm had settled over him, almost as if a presence had entered his. Thoughts without permission. "What kind of presence?" Henry asked, still skeptical. Leora's gaze was serious. "It is not malicious, not yet, but it is ancient and patient. If ignored, it may act in ways you cannot control. That is why I warned you." Elias looked down at his hands. They seemed normal. The air was still. Nothing felt different. And yet a voice in his mind, soft, almost imperceptible, seemed to echo Leora's warning. "Listen. Prepare. Understand." He blinked and shook his head. "I hear something, but it's faint. I don't understand it." "That is normal," Leora said. "At first, it is subtle, but it grows as it learns to trust you. It recognizes human potential, but it tests patience too." The humans exchanged uneasy glances. Even Henry, the staunch skeptic, was quiet now. Something about Leora's presence and the strange pulse beneath their feet. Disbelief feel wrong. Elias straightened. "Then we need to learn. If this force communicates, we need to listen carefully. Can you teach us?" Leora nodded.
I can't.
"But time is limited. Its awakening is soon. If you act too slowly, the consequences may be severe." The human team began setting up observation equipment under Leora's guidance. Devices hummed softly as sensors measured vibrations, energy flows, and subtle changes in the environment. Elias concentrated, trying to focus on the faint voice inside his mind. At first, he could only hear fragments, images, sensations, brief thoughts. But slowly, a pattern began to form, a shape, a pulse, a warning. "Something moves beneath the eastern ridge." Elias said aloud, almost as if the words were not entirely his own. The team froze. "How do you know that?" Henry demanded. I just know, Elias said, his voice steady. He felt the strange presence guiding him, not forcing him, just nudging. Leora's eyes gleamed with approval. You understand faster than most humans, she said. It has chosen you, Captain Kane. That is why it speaks through you first. The humans were amazed. Skepticism was giving way to awe. Even Henry stared at Elias as if he had suddenly become something more than humana, bridge between humanity and the ancient intelligence beneath the URELIA-7. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground. Leaves fluttered, and small rocks tumbled down the ravine. The sensors went wild, displaying readings that humans had never encountered before. Leora's expression darkened. It begins, she whispered. Elias felt the pulse intensify in his mind. Images flashed, twisting tunnels deep beneath the planet. Walls lined with glowing symbols, something vast and aware moving through them. The entity was alive, vast and curious about the humans above. Everyone. Stay calm, Elias said, his voice carrying an authority that felt instinctive. We observe. We don't act rashly. The team followed his instructions, their fear tempered by the calm that seemed to radiate from him. The presence inside him seemed to approve, guiding his words and actions. For hours they observed. The rumbling subsided and returned in waves. Leora explained what each sensor reading meant, interpreting them for the humans in ways that were simple to understand, yet profound. The entity, she explained, was not inherently hostile. It had survived countless millennia and was capable of incredible power, but it required respect, understanding, and intelligence to communicate safely. As dusk fell over the forest, Elias sat cross-legged on the ground, focusing on the pulse once more. The presence inside him was stronger now, more insistent. It whispered ideas, solutions, possibilities, all subtle, all meant to test his comprehension. You are ready to hear more, Leora said softly, sitting beside him. But you must promise whatever it shows you, do not let fear drive your actions. The entity respects courage, patience, and wisdom. I understand, Elias said, nodding. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a connection not only to the entity but to the planet itself. It was as if Aurelia 7 was alive in ways humans had never imagined, and it had chosen him to be its first listener. The night settled over the colony. Stars twinkling faintly through the violet-tinged sky. Leora stayed close, observing Elias as he sat quietly, communicating silently with something older than humanity itself, and somewhere deep beneath the surface. The ancient presence watched, waiting, speaking, and beginning its first cautious steps toward understanding the humans who had arrived on its world, to be continued.